Your birth chart is a calendar, one that's unique to you because it's a picture of the heavens at the moment of your birth. You can think of it as a screenshot of the sky, your sky, and this individualized star map will guide you throughout your entire life. It tells you when you're in season or out, and when it's a good time to start a venture or think better of it. It shows you grace periods where you can breeze right past obstacles, and it gives you a heads up on future rough patches where you can expect resistance. And that was one of my favorite passages from Christopher Renstrom's book, The Cosmic Calendar. The book outlines a way to turn your birth chart into a calendar that's uniquely aligned with your natural flow and personal seasons. I couldn't help but imagine how amazing it would be if Christopher could teach an online course based on the content, providing an opportunity to teach the content live, answer your questions as you apply the ideas in your life, and hold your hand as you map out your personal cosmic calendar. I'm happy to announce that dream has come true, and registration for the Cosmic Calendar online course is now open. No more feeling like you're swimming against the tide as you try to accomplish things before the time is right, or missing windows of opportunity because you weren't ready to take action. Now's the time to experience having the full support of the universe behind you. Enrollment is now open. Class begins in March, and you can go to astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar to reserve your spot today. And Inner Circle members, be sure to check your membership portal for your discount code. Again, that's astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar. We can't wait to see you in class.
Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about Venus's third and final conjunction to Pluto on March 3rd. Maybe you remember these back and forth Venus-Pluto conjunctions. The first Venus-Pluto conjunction took place on December 11th. Then Venus turned retrograde on December 19th, formed a second conjunction to Pluto on December 25th, and now, after having come back out of retrograde, Venus is passing back over Pluto on March 3rd, which is why I'm describing it as Venus's third and final conjunction to Pluto in this particular passage. Now, what do Venus-Pluto conjunctions mean? Venus-Pluto conjunctions are very complicated affairs, because they often attract. Venus, as you remember from previous podcasts, is the planet of attraction in astrology. Venus-Pluto conjunctions often have a tendency to attract darker sorts of romantic or entangled situations that might involve business or money as well. In other words, what a Venus-Pluto conjunction will bring about often will occur as something like a love triangle, where you're in a relationship and then suddenly you feel like you can't live without someone else that you just met. Or maybe you're the person in the relationship and your partner or spouse has met someone that they feel like they can't possibly live without. So Venus and Pluto conjunctions have a tendency to bring out these sorts of love triangles, which can be very painful and very, very difficult. But Venus-Pluto conjunctions also lend themselves to other different types of situations. Remember that in astrology, Venus is the planet of pledges, okay? It's the planet of betrothal. And what betrothal means literally is to be true to all, or to be true to you. So Venus is the planet of betrothals. It's the planet of being true to you, being true to a pledge or a promise that's been made. So again, when you have a Venus-Pluto conjunction, There can be this feeling of breaking ties in a business situation. Maybe you're in a business situation and suddenly you become enamored of another opportunity or an invite. And so you're going to break ties with where you are right now in order to go and pursue something that you've become enamored with. And of course, Venus is going to rule over things that we've become enamored with. And then what we can also have with Venus-Pluto conjunction is a breaking of a pledge, that there's this pledge that's been made and now I'm going to break it. Now, people's reactions to these sorts of ideas are really kind of like, really? And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, if we pledge ourselves to someone or to something, I mean, is that really a pledge that we make for life? Is it really a pledge that's never revisited? Isn't there such a thing as making a pledge and maybe not knowing that the person that we're pledging ourselves to is a creep, or a situation is exploiting us, or there are circumstances that appear that change our feelings and or our financial situation, and so in that sense, one might say, well, isn't the breaking of the pledge worthwhile? Is someone supposed to stay in a relationship that's bad for them, or a business situation in which they're being robbed or exploited? I mean, of course you go ahead and break a pledge. And those sorts of breaks in pledges are indeed things that occur and do take place. But they are things that occur and do take place under different planetary configurations. Whenever we're dealing with Pluto, the break in the pledge, the break of faith, the break of trust has a Plutonian side to it. In other words, there's more that's going on underneath the surface. It's much more of a dilemma. It's much more complicated. And what's going to be pressed here is really sort of one's knowledge or one's certainty in going ahead and breaking this pledge. So in other words, if your response, for instance, around December 11th was like, wow, what a hottie, I'm going to like leave this relationship and go after hottie. Okay, that's not going to turn out well, not with Pluto involved. There's going to be a moment of reckoning, and it's not going to be too great. But chances are that around that December 11th placement, leading to December 19th when Venus turned retrograde, what was brought out was a very powerful compulsion of wanting to be with that person, or a conviction that, therein lies my destiny, so I'm going to break pledges with everyone I know and pursue it, or this conviction, this almost kind of obsession, because Pluto will always bring in life and death stakes. That's why it's never something as simple as like, oh, there's a hottie, I'm going to go run after them. There's something much more life or death about what's going on, and there's a lot more angst. There's a lot more agonizing that take place whenever we bring in Pluto, and we're fighting for something that we feel that we cannot live without. Okay, so when Venus becomes inflamed in this way by the dark fires of Pluto, there is this feeling of obsession or compulsion, like I have to do this, I can't live without this, and so I'm going to risk everything that I had. Now, some people might say, okay, that sounds a little bit more fiery, more reckless, more rash. It's not, because what I hope to convey is this hunger. Pluto will bring up this hunger. I can't possibly live without this. I have to have this person. I have to have this situation. What I'm breaking my pledges to you because my future lies elsewhere, and I'm fighting for that life or death situation. So Pluto isn't going to relinquish anything without a lot of pain. Pluto isn't going to relinquish anything without a lot of very deep thought as to what the consequences of your actions are going to be. This is one of those moments where I like to bring up and remind you that Pluto, like his brother god in the Greek pantheon, Zeus or Jupiter, Pluto is a judge. Okay, and so Pluto is is a judge of those who have descended down to his realm, which is the underworld, and they're going to be judged as to whether they're righteous or whether they're guilty. If they're righteous, then they will be released into the Elysian fields where they will dance and frolic and play panpipes or hang out or whatever. If they have been found bad, they will be thrown into the belching pits of Tartarus. Okay, so what we're dealing with will have a lot of feelings of guilt or of shame, or I have to choose myself over you. I have to choose myself over this situation. I know I'm letting you down. I'm shirking a responsibility. I'm walking out on an obligation, but I'm choosing myself over this to break this pledge. Okay, and Venus next to Pluto really does carry that kind of weight. But because we're dealing with a retrograde, this wasn't just a quick pass over Pluto. Okay, Venus passed over Pluto, turned retrograde, passed back over Pluto again, and is now on March 3rd passing over Pluto for a third time. So there has been a lot of time to think about it. There has been a lot of time to roast in the fire. There's been a lot of time to really contemplate whether this is the right action for you or not. And if this action is something you've done, how did you react to it? And if this action was something that was done to you, you were the one who was left, or you were the one who was abandoned, or you were the one whose fidelity was broken. Okay, where are you about that, mentally and spiritually and emotionally? Where are you in that space? These are the things that are coming up with this third and final pass of Venus after her retrograde over the place of Pluto. Something that we need to be very aware of is first of all, sometimes we have to make choices that are not pretty, okay? And this is a Venus-Pluto thing. Sometimes we have to make choices that are not pretty, choices where people are going to be hurt, choices where we're going to be hurt, or we're hurting in the process of making this choice. Okay, so there's that. Sometimes the choices just aren't pretty. Sometimes the choices are desperate. Sometimes the choices are survival. I mean, it's a Venus-Pluto conjunction. There's a life or death intensity to what's being faced here. So there's that, okay? But in addition to that, when we're faced with a choice that makes us feel guilty or bad or ashamed, where do we go? Where do we go emotionally with that? Where do we go intellectually with that? Do we say, okay, this isn't a great choice. I'm sorry you're hurt. I'm hurting too. And we leave it like that and we let things play out, okay? Or do we turn to a dark place, do we blame the person who's holding us or keeping us from following something that we want? Do we, if we're leaving a relationship, do we say this relationship was horrible from the start? It was bad. It was a bad choice, and we're a bad fit, and you're a bad person. A lot of times when we're in a place of guilt and when we're in a place of shame, we smear the other person. We smear the glass. We smear the looking glass so that it is dark. Okay, and we look through a glass darkly. Everything about this relationship was wrong. Everything about this job was dreadful. Everything about this contract was put together in such a way as to exploit me and to hurt me, and so I am breaking about this. Everything about you or this situation, awful, and so Pluto and Venus together can get like that. It can get very, very dark, and it's getting dark in such a way as to make the break okay. It's a way of justifying the break, and it's very hard to not go there. It's very hard to not go there when you know that you're causing someone else pain. You want to strike out against the pain, and you want to make that pain stop, and you want to blame that person, or if you're being left, it's very hard not to go there to, yell at the person, traitor, betrayer, you're breaking my heart, a curse upon you and your following generations. I mean, they do that all the time in Greek plays, and it doesn't turn out well. But it's very hard to not do that. Okay. And Pluto is a fascinating planet. Whenever you see Pluto's appearance in Greek myths, and he doesn't show up a lot, okay? He doesn't show up many times, but when he does show up, there's always a sort of knowingness to Pluto that people often mistake as, verboten, forbidden, or even cynical. There's a sort of cynicism, to Pluto. And what it is that Pluto is the Lord of the underworld. He looks at things from the point of view of roots. Like we're on the surface world, so we look at trees and we celebrate their leaves and their branches and their fruit and the things that they give us. But Pluto is in the underworld, so he's underneath the trees and he looks at the roots. He sees the roots of trees and he sees the roots of actions. Okay, he sees the roots and the agendas and the motives that we don't see. He sees where they're coming from. It may be from a past moment, or it may be from a past generation, but this is the world that Pluto lives in. He sees how things are going to play out, not in an all-knowing way, okay, not in a sky god way, a Jupiter way, like I can see how things will play out, sort of way. He sees how things are going to play out because he sees what the seed of that action was. He sees how the root came out and spread, and he sees where it's going to go, much further than the person who was pleading with him or who was making their case, whether it's Orpheus pleading for Eurydice or whether it's Demeter pleading for the return of her daughter. Pluto can see how it's all going to play out, and it's not from prophecy, it's not from foreknowledge, it's from an intimate awareness of history, roots, and seeds, where things are coming from, and an intimate knowledge of what people aren't looking at, what they're trying to avoid, what they're trying to, look past, as if they're whistling past a graveyard late at night. Pluto knows all of these things. So what's very important is to also remember astrologically the function of Pluto in astrology. The function of Pluto in astrology is the growth of our seed self, and that seed self is that self that we grow out of. It's not our unconscious. The seed self is, and it's not our ego. It's almost like that. The closest way of really sort of translating it is the will to survival, or the will to live. But the seed self is that part of ourselves that's going to grow out in all directions and in ways that we never anticipated. It's, at the age of 7, you don't know who you're going to be at 37 or 52, and so it's that seed self. And then when you're at 37 or 52, you look back and you say, wow, I never knew that I was going to grow in this direction, or that this was going to, capture the focus of my life, or anything along those lines. That's Pluto, what we carry around in our gut. Okay, what we carry around inside of ourselves, that seed self. So it's Pluto astrologically is the planet of ordeals and the transformations that arise from them. And it's very important to remember that whole title. It is ordeals and the transformations that arise from them. In other words, it's not just transformations. Everyone wants to skip ahead with Pluto and be like, transformations, like I used to be, mousy haired and overweight, but I've gone through a transformation. I've dyed my hair blonde and now I've got a fabulous figure and it's a new me. No, it's not like that. Transformation is what arises out of ordeal. It's what arises out of that descent down into the underworld or into hell, which are all things that we have experienced in our lives whenever we've dealt with a Pluto transit. Sometimes Sometimes we may not come back from that. The heartbreak may be too much, or the failure too heavy. But sometimes it's that descent that empowers us to be reborn and to come back in a way that's different but familiar, and that's so much more ourselves than we were before. And we also carry a kind of infernal knowledge, a dark knowledge that comes from having gone through that experience. So that's where you are with this third pass of Venus over Pluto this week. You are emerging from, did it end in a breakup? Did it not become a breakup? Did you move on to another situation? And are you carrying great regret or fear? Or did you have to, and you're carrying that kind of resolve and that feeling of like, having let people down? Like, how have these broken trusts, how have these broken pledges, how have these scorned agreements played out in your life? Were they things that were necessary, or were they things that have brought more difficulty and more turmoil? Because Venus is the planet of peace. Venus is the planet of treaties, of truces, of pledges, of those agreements. This is what she stands for. And as I said earlier, sometimes we have to make amendments to those, and sometimes we break them without really understanding what was really at stake. Okay. And this is the question that Venus is asking. And the question that I would be asking is, how's that working for you? I mean, was it a worthwhile break? Was it something that really was important? Or is it something that, you're not sure if that's right? Or is it something that you're still struggling with, and if you're still struggling with the realization that that opportunity or that time has passed, and that you perhaps are going to have to live with the relationship you were thinking of leaving, the job you were thinking of leaving, or the neighborhood you were thinking of leaving, the family you were thinking of leaving, and how's that going to sit with you? Are you going to resent them, or are you going to, in the spirit of Venus, make peace with that situation? So what you're being invited to do with this third and final pass of Venus over Pluto, which also is a conjunction to Mars. So that's tumultuous. This is not an easy passage. This is tumultuous. What was the cost of those treaties, those truces, those pledges, those betrothals? The Mars and Mars and Venus both conjoin Pluto on the same day before they pass into Aquarius, which is an entirely different zodiac sign, on March 6th. So how you doing with that? What are these feelings? And for those of you who feel like you had to stay with the situation, how are you going to make peace with that? And how are you going to turn a situation where you were looking through a glass darkly into a situation where you are looking through a glass clearly?